Humanity's voice echoed through the grand chambers of the Galactic Council, a seat earned not by the passage of time, but through grit, ingenuity, and survival. Among the assembly of alien species, humanity was both an enigma and a contradiction. For centuries, their diplomats had brokered peace between warring factions, their engineers had fueled interstellar progress, and their philosophers had inspired unity. Yet now, the coalition they helped build was crumbling under the relentless assault of the absorbers, a force that consumed entire civilizations, leaving only silence in its wake. The coalition was teetering, its fleets reduced to scattered remnants, its morale crushed by the absorbers' efficiency. Once proud races now debated flight over fight, survival over sacrifice. Amid the despair, whispers of Earth's storied past began to ripple. Humanity's reputation, long buried under years of peacekeeping, was surfacing once more. The stories of wars that shaped them, the battles that had tested their resolve, and the victories that had solidified their place among the stars. But not all humans were eager to revisit that legacy. Pacifists within their ranks had gained significant influence, championing a future untainted by the scars of violence. If we fight like them, we become them, argued their leader Elias Trent, whose eloquence made him the figurehead of a generation that saw change. We cannot preserve life by extinguishing it. His words fell heavily on Commander Elena Rourke, who sat rigid at the council table. Her presence commanded respect. Her battle-scarred face, her hardened gaze, they told a story of someone who had seen war in its most brutal forms. Yet even she found herself questioning. War had always been humanity's cruel tutor, but how much more could it teach without breaking them entirely? General Thurrock, towering and reptilian, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. As commander of one of the coalition's oldest fleets, he had seen the devastation firsthand. Humans, he began, his voice tinged with both reverence and exasperation. You are the warriors of myth. We need you, not as diplomats or philosophers, but as what you are, the masters of war. Rourke glanced at Trent, whose calm demeanor belied the fiery resistance in his tone. General Thurrock, Trent interjected, humanity's myths are built on a foundation of destruction. We've left those days behind for a reason. War isn't the answer. It never has been. And what would you suggest, Trent? Thurrock retorted, his claws tapping the table. The absorbers do not negotiate. They do not stop. They do not speak. Tell me, what words would you offer them as they consume your homeworld? Rourke's silence was deafening. She knew Thurrock's frustration was justified. The coalition was unraveling, and the absorbers advanced like an unstoppable tide. Reports from the front lines painted a grim picture. Fleets annihilated in hours, entire planets left barren. The coalition's forces, cobbled together from disparate species, lacked unity and direction. Without decisive leadership, the war would be lost. Yet, to answer Thurrock's plea meant reigniting the fire Trent and his pacifist movement had spent decades extinguishing. The burden weighed heavily on Rourke. She knew the cost of war, not just in lives, but in the souls it claimed. A holographic projection illuminated the council chamber, showing the grim aftermath of the latest battle. Coalition ships floated lifelessly among the wreckage, their crews vaporized or worse. Survivors on nearby planets were few, their cries for help silenced by the absorbers' relentless advance. Thurrock's claws clenched as he turned to Rourke. This is the cost of your hesitation. Trent stood abruptly. And what's the cost of action, General? Do you think humanity can lead this coalition into war without becoming the very monsters we seek to destroy? The absorbers don't just consume worlds. They destroy what makes us civilized. If we stoop to their level, what are we saving? Rourke's gaze fixed on the hologram. Her jaw tightened as she watched another world fade into ruin. She knew Trent wasn't wrong, but neither was Thurrock. She spoke slowly, her voice steady but laden with grief. War isn't about becoming monsters. It's about ensuring that monsters don't have the last word. The council chamber fell silent. Thurok nodded, his expression grim but resolute. Trent said nothing, his face a mixture of defiance and doubt. The decision loomed large, but time was slipping away. Outside, the coalition was waiting. Humanity's choice would determine their fate. Humanity's history was written in fire. The ruins of ancient wars still dotted Earth's surface, scars left behind by conflicts that nearly erased them. The first flashpoints had been local, tribes and nations vying for land, power, and pride. But as humanity grew, so did its capacity for destruction. Nuclear wars had blackened the skies, turning cities into ash and entire regions into wastelands. Humanity teetered on the brink, nearly snuffing itself out. It wasn't just the bombs. Centuries of warfare had bled the earth dry, leaving poisoned oceans, desolate forests, and air thick with toxins. But from those ashes, humanity clawed its way back. Rebuilding became its obsession, not just the physical, but the moral. Leaders who had once ordered armies now championed peace. Philosophers shaped a new ethos. War was no longer survival. It was a failure of intellect, a stain on civilization. When humanity took its first steps into the stars, it carried that lesson with it. They approached alien species not as conquerors, but as collaborators, eager to share ideas and avoid the mistakes that had nearly destroyed them. Galactic historians spoke of humans with awe, describing them as the first species to truly transcend their violent roots. They had become a symbol of hope, showing that even the most warlike could embrace peace. It was a narrative humanity cherished, a mantle they wore with pride. But the galaxy hadn't forgotten what humanity was before its rebirth. They were destroyers as much as they were creators. For every story of Earth's triumph over violence, there were tales of its mastery of war. Battles where humans had turned the tide with cunning and ruthlessness. Wars where they'd invented tools of annihilation no other species could fathom. To the Council's philosophers, humanity stood as both a warning and a beacon. The question now was, which path would they choose? Elias Trent leaned forward, his voice steady but tinged with frustration. Commander, we rebuilt Earth after the horrors of war. We swore we'd never go back. So why is this even a debate? The coalition needs leadership, yes, but not the kind you're offering. What you're proposing isn't leadership, it's regression. Rourke, arms crossed, stared at him with the weight of 1,000 battlefields behind her eyes. You think I want this? Do you think I don't know what war costs? You look at the scars on my face, but you don't see the ones on my soul. I've carried the weight of those decisions my entire life. Trent didn't flinch. Then why carry it again? Why inflict it on another generation? We have alternatives. Diplomacy. Diplomacy? Rourke snapped. Do you think the absorbers care about treaties or appeals to reason? You can't negotiate with a species that devours entire worlds without saying a word. War doesn't end because you wish it to, Trent. Peace is written in blood. Always has been, always will be. Maybe that's the problem, Trent said, his tone softening but no less firm. We've convinced ourselves that violence is inevitable. You're asking us to save the coalition, but at what cost ourselves? Do we survive only to lose the part of us that's worth saving? The argument hung in the air, unresolved. Neither of them was wrong. Across the stars, the absorbers were leaving nothing to debate. Their latest conquest, a vibrant planet called Vecran, was now silent. Once lush with alien cities and sprawling forests, it was now lifeless. General Thurok stood in the ruins, his armored form towering over the alien refugees huddled beneath emergency shelters. These survivors had fled as their home burned behind them. Now they stared up at Thurok and the coalition soldiers, their eyes filled with despair. The refugees whispered among themselves, their voices carrying the same question. Where are the humans? Why aren't they fighting? Thurok knew the answer, but he couldn't bring himself to say it. Humanity's reluctance was more than hesitation, it was paralysis. He couldn't understand it. For centuries, the coalition had spoken of Earth's warriors with reverence, weaving legends of humans who had turned the tides of unwinnable battles. The myths painted them as unstoppable, a species so attuned to war that their enemies often surrendered rather than faced their wrath. But the humans Thurrock now saw were hesitant, their actions tempered by indecision and fear. He clenched his fists, watching as his soldiers struggled to contain the refugees' panic. "How much longer do we wait for Earth to act?" he muttered under his breath, his tone bitter. A young refugee, her face streaked with ash, tugged at his arm. "The humans will come, won't they? They'll save us." Thurrock didn't have the heart to answer. He looked to the sky, hoping against hope that humanity would remember who they truly were before it was too late. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with despair and rising tension. Reports from the front lines left little room for optimism. Another 3 coalition fleets obliterated, a dozen worlds consumed in the last standard month. The absorbers weren't just winning. They were dismantling the coalition piece by piece. This wasn't a war, it was annihilation. Elena Rourke stood before the council, her voice steady, but her words carrying the weight of an impossible decision. "The coalition is dying. We've tried diplomacy. We've tried retreat. Nothing works because this enemy doesn't negotiate. They don't recognize weakness. They consume it. If humanity doesn't act now, there won't be a coalition left to save." The council erupted in a mix of anger and fear. Alien representatives argued in overlapping voices, some pleading for immediate action, others accusing humanity of withholding its full strength for too long. General Thurrock's booming voice cut through the chaos. "You humans were supposed to lead us. Where is the war machine the galaxy fears? Where are the tactics that made you legends? If you don't act, the coalition is finished." Rourke locked eyes with Elias Trent, who sat silently at the human delegation's table. He had fought tooth and nail against this moment, and now it had arrived. He rose slowly, his calm demeanor masking the turmoil beneath. "I won't stand here and pretend this isn't necessary," Trent said, his voice measured but firm. "But we must understand the cost. Every step we take toward war pulls us further away from what we've become. The absorbers may not destroy us physically, but they will erode our humanity." Rourke stepped closer to him. "And if we do nothing? What happens when they reach Earth? Will we cling to our ideals while our children are consumed? This isn't about who we want to be, Trent. It's about survival." Trent held her gaze for a long moment before nodding, his resistance crumbling under the weight of reality. "If we do this, Commander, we do it knowing there's no going back. The scars we leave will last generations." The decision was made. Across Earth and its orbital platforms, old ghosts stirred. War machines, dormant for decades, roared back to life. High above the planet, orbital defense stations powered up, their long silent weapon systems calibrated for maximum efficiency. Swarms of self-replicating drones reactivated, their AI cores humming with cold precision. Weapons buried deep within Earth's crust were unearthed, their capabilities whispered of in only the darkest legends of human warfare. Veterans of humanity's past conflicts stepped forward, their faces etched with the weight of what they had seen. They trained alien coalition members with a precision that bordered on brutal. Lessons on ambush tactics, psychological warfare, and asymmetrical strategies were delivered with unflinching resolve. Some alien recruits questioned the methods, others recoiled at the ruthlessness, but none could deny the results. Humanity's war doctrine was unlike anything they had ever encountered. One alien recruit watched in horror as a human veteran demonstrated an urban warfare maneuver that involved luring enemy forces into a choke point before unleashing overwhelming firepower. The recruit turned to his instructor. "This is efficient, but isn't it cruel?" The instructor, a grizzled ex-soldier, replied coldly, "Cruelty's got nothing to do with it. You want to survive, or do you want to be noble when they take your home?" The coalition forces quickly adapted. Their units restructured under human guidance. Thurrock observed these changes with a mixture of awe and unease. This was what he had wanted, a united coalition capable of standing against the absorbers. Yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that something vital was being lost in the process. As Earth mobilized, the personal cost of war became painfully clear. Families gathered at starports to say their goodbyes, their faces shadowed by the uncertainty of whether they would reunite. Soldiers stood in line, silently boarding transport ships that would carry them to the front lines. Some carried trinkets from loved ones. Others carried the heavy knowledge that their chances of returning were slim. Rourke watched from the observation deck of the main orbital station, her expression unreadable. She had done this before, watched the price of leadership unfold in real time. But this time was different. This wasn't just about saving Earth. It was about saving everything humanity had built in the stars. And she couldn't shake the nagging question. Was she saving the coalition, or was she dooming humanity to repeat its darkest chapters? Meanwhile, Trent worked tirelessly in the background, organizing humanitarian efforts for the displaced alien refugees pouring into coalition-controlled systems. He coordinated food supplies, shelter arrangements, and medical aid, refusing to let the war define humanity entirely. To him, this was a battle for humanity's soul as much as for its survival. In the quiet moments, Rourke and Trent crossed paths in the command center. "You're doing good work," Rourke admitted, breaking the silence. "So are you," Trent replied. "I just hope we're not losing the best parts of ourselves in the process." Rourke looked out at the stars, her expression softening for just a moment. "If we are, then we'll find a way to rebuild. That's what humans do." The coalition fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of light and metal, a patchwork of vessels united under humanity's command. Arrayed against them was the vast, silent expanse of the absorber fleet, an unbroken tide of matte black ships, their surfaces shifting with an unsettling organic flow. The battlefield hung in the void, a stark juxtaposition of desperate unity against unyielding destruction. Commander Elena Rourke stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship, resolute, her voice sharp and unwavering as she issued commands. "Deploy decoy drones. All squadrons, hold formation until the signal. Precision and timing will win this." The coalition fleet began its assault. Decoy drones swarmed forward, mimicking the signatures of capital ships to draw the absorber's fire. From hidden positions within asteroid fields, strike groups emerged, unleashing concentrated volleys that tore through the absorber's flanks. Human-designed weapons, hyperkinetic railguns, plasma bursts, and electromagnetic pulses ripped into the enemy with a ferocity that stunned even the coalition's alien commanders. In the chaos, humanity's tactical genius shone. Flanking maneuvers, hit-and-run strikes, and coordinated ambushes pushed the absorbers into a defensive posture. Alien coalition members, though initially hesitant, followed humanity's lead, their fleets moving with uncharacteristic precision. The absorbers, for the first time, faltered. Thurrock watched the unfolding battle from his command ship, his admiration tempered by unease. This is what I feared and hoped for," he muttered. Humans fighting as they were meant to. But the absorbers were not an enemy easily outwitted. As the battle raged, their tactics shifted with unsettling speed. Their central flagship, a massive living construct, began to emit waves of energy that disrupted coalition targeting systems. Ships faltered, their shots going wide, while absorber vessels counterattacked with brutal efficiency. The coalition's momentum stalled. On board the Resolute, Rourke clenched her fists as reports flooded in. Squadrons lost, allies outflanked. Then came the absorber's trump card, a terrifying new weapon. A colossal biomechanical cannon emerged from their flagship, its power dwarfing anything the coalition had faced before. With a single shot, it obliterated an entire coalition carrier and its escorts. The cannon recharged, ominous and inevitable. We don't have time for precision strikes, Rourke said, her voice hard. We need to take that weapon out now. Her second-in-command, a trusted veteran named Major Caldwell, stepped forward. Commander, the only way to reach that cannon is a direct assault. We'll lose too many ships. Rourke's face tightened, but her resolve was unshaken. Assemble a strike team. We'll need volunteers for a suicide run. The room fell silent. Then Caldwell, without hesitation, said, I'll lead the charge. No, Rourke said firmly, locking eyes with him. You're too valuable. But, thank you, Caldwell. She turned to the rest of the bridge crew. Get me the names of anyone willing to go. Make sure they know what they're signing up for. Across the coalition fleet, a call went out. Pilots from Earth and its allies stepped forward, knowing they might never return. Among them was a young alien cadet from Thurrock's homeworld, who saluted the human officers before boarding his fighter. If you can fight for my people, I can fight for yours. The strike team launched. A dozen ships wove through enemy fire, dodging absorber attacks with a precision born of desperation. Coalition forces launched a diversionary assault to buy them time. The closer the team got to the absorber flagship, the more intense the resistance became. Fighters were picked off one by one, their destruction lighting up the void. On the Resolute, Rourke watched every loss, her jaw clenched. Caldwell stood beside her, silent but resolute. They'll make it, he said, though his voice betrayed doubt. Finally, the remaining ships of the strike team reached the cannon. Using coordinated kamikaze maneuvers, they crashed into its superstructure, detonating their payloads in fiery bursts. The cannon exploded in a brilliant cascade of energy, its destruction rippling through the absorber fleet. But the cost was immense. The coalition fleet had lost nearly a third of its ships. The battlefield was littered with the wreckage of vessels, human and alien alike. Emergency broadcasts filled the comm channels, desperate cries for rescue and triage. On the bridge of the Resolute, a stunned silence followed the reports of the strike team's success. Rourke slumped into her chair, exhaustion and grief etched into her face. Caldwell placed a hand on her shoulder. They did it, Commander. We won, did we? Rourke murmured, her gaze fixed on the debris field. The losses weighed on her like a crushing tide. The coalition rallied, pressing the advantage. With the absorber's flagship crippled, their forces retreated, their once unstoppable tide halted, at least for now. Cheers erupted across the fleet as the coalition realized they had achieved a victory, though its bitter cost was undeniable. After the battle, Rourke stood with Thurrock on a damaged coalition cruiser, surveying the battlefield. Alien and human alike worked side by side to recover the dead and wounded. Thurrock's deep voice broke the silence. Your people are stronger than I imagined. You turned the tide when no one else could. At what price? Rourke asked, her voice hollow. Thurrock regarded her carefully. That's the question, isn't it? Whether survival is worth what we lose of ourselves. Rourke didn't reply. She looked out at the stars, the remnants of the battle drifting silently in the void. The absorbers had been stopped, but she knew the war was far from over. The real question was how much of humanity and the coalition they could afford to sacrifice before the final battle came. The battlefield was silent now, save for the flickering remains of shattered ships and the distant glow of dying embers across what had once been thriving worlds. Coalition rescue ships darted through the debris, pulling survivors from wreckage, while medical frigates filled to capacity with the injured and dying. The war was far from over, but the victory was undeniable, and so was the cost. On Earth and its colonies, celebrations were muted by grief. News reports carried images of somber processions for the fallen, their names scrolling endlessly across holographic screens. Makeshift memorials sprang up in cities and starports alike, as families left flowers and relics for those who would never return. The coalition's refugee stations overflowed with displaced beings, their eyes hollow from the horrors they had endured. In the war-torn streets of an alien world saved by the Coalition, a human soldier knelt before a child clutching the remnants of a broken toy. With shaking hands, the soldier offered a small ration pack, their weathered face etched with guilt. "I'm sorry," they whispered, though the child likely didn't understand. Actions, not words, were what mattered now. Rourke stood in the quiet of the Resolute's observation deck, staring out at the battered remnants of the fleet. The scars of war stretched far beyond the dead. For every victory, there was a price to pay, one that weighed heavily on her shoulders. The Coalition had survived, but it was a fragile survival, a tenuous thread straining under the weight of sacrifice. Elias Trent found her there, his face gaunt but resolute. "They're calling this a victory," he said, his tone neutral, his eyes distant. "It is," Rourke replied, though her voice lacked conviction. "We stopped them?" Trent joined her by the viewport, his gaze sweeping across the debris-strewn void. "At what cost, Elena? Thousands dead. Dozens of worlds gone. Humanity stepped up, but I wonder, did we lose something of ourselves in the process?" She didn't answer immediately, letting the silence stretch between them. "Finally," she said, "we did what we had to do. Survival doesn't leave room for clean hands." Trent nodded, though his expression was far from resolved. "And what happens now?" "The absorbers retreated, but they're not gone. We've bought time, not peace." "That's all we ever buy," Rourke said quietly. "Time to rebuild. Time to prepare for the next fight. We'll be ready when it comes." Across the Coalition, rebuilding efforts began. Alien species, once fractured and distrustful, worked together under humanity's guidance. Earth became a beacon of leadership, its dual reputation as destroyer and savior cemented in the annals of galactic history. While some hailed humanity as a protector, others whispered of their fear that the warlike tendencies of the humans would one day turn inward. Thurrock approached Rourke as she oversaw repairs on a Coalition base. "Your people," he said, his voice a blend of admiration and unease, "have a gift for destruction and salvation in equal measure. It's a dangerous combination." Rourke gave a grim smile. "We've been balancing it for centuries." In quiet moments, Rourke and Trent spoke of the future. Trent's pacifist ideals had been tested, but he remained steadfast in his belief that humanity could be better. "War shouldn't define us," he said one night as they sat by a memorial wall etched with the names of the fallen. "We have to find a way to lead without losing ourselves." Rourke traced a name with her gloved hand, her voice soft. "And if leading means more sacrifices like this, would you still want the responsibility?" Trent hesitated, but nodded. "If it means fewer lives lost in the long run, yes. But we have to make sure we're fighting for the right reasons, not just because we can." The Coalition's unity held for now, but cracks lingered beneath the surface. Some worlds resented humanity's rise to dominance, while others depended on it too much. Humanity itself faced questions it had no easy answers to. Could they sustain peace after tasting the old ways of war again? Could they avoid repeating history? The Resolute left the battlefield for Earth, carrying its crew home. On board, Rourke reviewed reports of ongoing skirmishes and uneasy alliances. The war with the absorbers was far from over, but the Coalition's survival had bought them time. Precious time to regroup, to prepare for whatever came next. As the ship passed through the warp gate back to Earth, Rourke looked out at the stars. They were beautiful, vast, and indifferent, unshaken by the violence that had unfolded beneath them. Humanity had returned to war to protect the galaxy, but the stars offered no judgment, no absolution. Trent's voice came through the comms. "They're asking for you on the bridge, Commander." Rourke turned from the viewport, her expression a mix of weariness and determination. "On my way." In the vast, silent expanse of space, the Coalition's fleet continued its vigil. Humanity, warriors and protectors, destroyers and rebuilders, moved forward into an uncertain future. They carried the weight of war with them, knowing the cost of peace was never light, but it was worth carrying. Always.